All right, junior high, we're going to get started with our Bible class. And so I would ask that you do the same thing you did in the classroom and you put everything away except for your notes, a pen or a pencil. Even though we're doing this on YouTube, I want to make sure that you all are paying attention, okay? So no distractions, please. But we're going to be going over lesson number 40. We're going to be looking at the life of Habakkuk. He was a prophet for God, and he was a prophet to Judah. And so I'm going to give you a second. Go ahead and open your Bibles to the book of Habakkuk. That way we can go through some of these verses together. I'm going to go over just some of the information that we're going to go over for the prophet of Habakkuk. Just a couple of things that I want to talk about. The reason or the purpose of the book of Habakkuk is to show that God is still in control of the world, even though there's evil all over. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen a good person treated badly? Or do you know a person who always tries to help other people and they just get treated in a bad way, or people are mean to them? You know people like that? I think about some movies that I've seen where, you know, some of maybe the main character kind of gets picked on even though they're like a really nice person. And so they try to help other people and everyone else is just mean. You see a lot of stuff like that. And so it's important to understand that even in the world, there's things kind of like that. There's a lot of evil in the world. There's a lot of mean people or bad people who try to do things that they're not supposed to be doing. And so one of the reasons that Habakkuk was preaching is he wanted people to know that even though there's bad people all over, God is still in control. Now, Habakkuk was writing to Judah. He was a prophet to Judah. This was the period of the divided kingdom. I'm just going to remind you guys, Israel had 3 kings. They had Saul, and then they had David, and then they had Solomon. And after Solomon, the nation of Israel got split in half. And so you had the northern kingdom, and then you had the southern kingdom. And so in the southern kingdom, you had Judah and you had Benjamin. So Habakkuk would have been a prophet to the southern kingdom, to the people of Judah, okay? This happened probably between 612 BC and 589 BC. You don't really need to know that. You just need to know that happened a pretty long time ago, okay? And then just a reminder, I put this in your packet, but you are going to need to know Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2. That's your verse for your verse quiz this week, okay? So make sure that you're studying that. Write it out on a flashcard. Ask your mom or one of your siblings or someone to help quiz you on that, because you're going to need to be able to write that down, okay? All right, just making sure you know. All right, so a couple of things that you need to write down in your notes. You need to know that he was a prophet to Judah. You need to know that the period was the divided kingdom after Israel's fall. And his message, the things that he wanted to say, that God is faithful and that he is in control, okay? So you need to go ahead and write those out. He was a prophet and a musician. You all know how sometimes the notes cut out part of the word, so you can see that right here. But what you're going to need to write in your paragraph, Habakkuk was a prophet, and he was also a musician. So in Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, "The burden which Habakkuk, the prophet, did see." So we know that Habakkuk was a prophet for God, okay? So that'll go in that blank there. Right before 1:1. And then he was also a musician. You can see that in chapter 3. It says, "A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet unto Shigonath." I think that's how you say that. It's a big old name. I've never seen it before except for here, so it's kind of hard to know how to spell it. But then also in verse 19, this is his prayer, remember? He says, "The Lord God is my strength, and he will make my feet like hinds' feet. And he will make me walk upon mine high places, to the chief singer on my stringed instruments." And so we can see that Habakkuk was not only a prophet, but he was also a musician. You know, I think sometimes people think that God only gives you one ability, but God can give people more than one talent, right? Just because people can preach doesn't mean they're bad at music. Just because they know how to do music doesn't mean they're bad at cooking, right? God can give you a lot of different talents, and it's your responsibility, no matter what talent he gives you, to make sure that you're using it for God. And so I want you to think for a second about maybe some of the talents that God has given you. Maybe you could even write them down on the side of your note page there. But I want you to think through if God has given you any good talents. Are you a good cook? Are you good at music? Are you a servant? Are you really wise with your money and you just like to save it and not really spend it unless there's a good reason? What talents has God given you? I'll give you just a second to write them down. Now I want you to kind of think through whatever talents God has given you. I want you to think of some ways that you can use those, okay? God gave you those talents for a reason, then it would be a waste if you just never used them. Think about it this way. When I was a kid, my parents gave me an awesome sled. It was so cool. I came down Christmas morning, and there was a gigantic sled. It was this big purple sled in the middle of the room, and I got so excited. And I was happy, It was snowing a lot where we lived, and I was going to be able to use it. Now, how silly would it be if I was like, wow, Mom, Dad, thank you so much for this sled. I love this so much. Help me put it in the garage. I'm never going to use it. No, that'd be crazy, right? Because they gave me that gift, I should use it. Now, God has given us gifts for a purpose, and so we ought to use it, okay? And so Habakkuk was both a prophet and a musician, and he used both of those gifts for God's glory. Now, he lived through Josiah's revival. He cried when Judah returned to idols. Remember how Israel was always struggling with idolatry, okay? God would punish them and chastise them, and then they would confess, oh God, we're so sinful, forgive us, and God would forgive them and deliver them out of the hand of the enemy, and then they would turn around and they would go right back into sin, okay? It's important to know that they had returned to idols, and then Habakkuk rejoiced when Nineveh crumbled in 612 BC, as Nahum had predicted. Remember, first Jonah went and Nineveh repented, and then way later, Nineveh fell. Okay, that happened in 612 BC. He saw a greater nation building power, and as the Babylonian Empire began to grow, Habakkuk watched his own nation sink into violence, idol worship, and unfair treatment of good people. Okay? In chapter 1 and verse 2 it says, O Lord, how long shall I cry? And will thou not hear? Even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. Verse 3, Why dost thou show me iniquity, and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me, and there that rise up strife and contention. Verse 4, Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. And so you see, he's talking about wicked people going around all the good people and passing forth judgment and being mean to them. And so he's seeing violence, idol worship, and good people being treated poorly, okay? And so we can see a couple of things that Habakkuk has some questions. And so in the next section, you can see it in your notes, it's titled, A Talk with God. And so Habakkuk sees all of this bad stuff happening, and he's like, all right, I need to do something about this. And so in those first 4 verses, he asks his first question. He says, why does the evil in Judah go unpunished? Why does the evil in Judah go unpunished? And so, focusing on my screen here, I want you to go ahead and write down those notes in that blank. Habakkuk asks God, he's like, God, you see all this bad stuff? Why are you letting it happen? Why aren't you doing anything about this, God? And God responded in verses 5 through 11. I'll read those. This is the Lord's answer, okay? He says, Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously. For I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told you. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And the horsemen shall spread themselves, and the horsemen shall come from far, and they shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. And they shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity as the sand. In verse 10, And they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. Then shall his mind change, and he shall pass over and offend, imputing this his power unto his God. So God's response, nice and simple. He says, I will use the Babylonians to punish Judah. So Habakkuk says, God, why are you letting all of this evil go unpunished? And then God said, I'm going to use Babylon to punish Judah, okay? So Habakkuk's second question that he had, how can a just God use the wicked Babylon? Now that's a good question, isn't it? God says, I'm going to use Babylon to punish Judah. But how can a God who's holy and perfect use something that's evil to do something good, right? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that God who's so perfect would use Babylon, a wicked, evil nation, to do something good. Well, his response, God's response, Babylon will be punished later because God rules the world, okay? You can see those down into your next bullet points, the Lord's second answer. Babylon will be punished later, and God rules the earth. So it's important to understand that God was able to use wicked Babylon to punish Israel, and then God was going to punish Babylon later on, okay? So God used them for a time being, but that doesn't mean that he was okay with or approving their actions. He was just using them to punish a different wicked nation, okay? And so God rules everything. So he was able to use Babylon to punish Judah. Does that make sense? All right, cool. So in chapter 3, you can see Habakkuk's prayer song, okay? And it's kind of long. It's 19 verses. You can read through it. You'll need to because you have to read all of the chapters in Habakkuk. Don't worry. It's only 3 chapters, so it's not that hard. Again, you can listen to it. But chapter 3 is Habakkuk's prayer or his song. Kind of like singing a poem, right? How many of you have ever written poetry before? I mean, that's basically what a song is. It's just poetry with music. So Habakkuk sang this song, and essentially what he was singing in this prayer song is, I will trust God because he is trustworthy, okay? I will trust God because he is trustworthy. You know, that's an important lesson for us. We can trust God because he is trustworthy. He's in control of everything. He blesses those who are faithful to him, and so we can trust God. Now, obviously, our world is in a pretty crazy time right now, right? And a lot of people are scared and freaking out because they don't know what's going to happen. And we should be smart. You know, we should be washing our hands. Don't be sneezing on your little brother or anything like that. But at the same time, as crazy as things are, we can still trust God because we know that he has a plan and we know that he's in control. And because of that, we don't have to fear, right? God is in control of the earth. He's in control of the whole world. And so we should also trust God because he is trustworthy, okay? Now, I want to make sure that you got all these notes filled out. You have a little bit more. I'll post another video later on, later this next week with the rest of the notes and a couple of follow-up points. So I want you to make sure that you got all these notes written out. Be sure that you're reading through the book of Habakkuk, that you're memorizing your verse, and I will talk to you all in the next video. But this is just a short explanation of Habakkuk, what it's about, some of the verses, and I hope that you learned. All right, we'll talk to you later on.